What's up, everybody? Jesse Carstairs here. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I got to apologize for the audio. The recording you're about to listen to is from my school community, High Value Life. Again, I'm not sure why the audio turned out this way, but there's a lot of gold nuggets. Thank you for sticking with it. Listen all the way through. Join my school community. All right, so today, again, I want to go over the difference between being a good man and being good at being a man. I guess this will be the kind of a question I throw out there. If anybody has any opinion on what the difference is before we get started. Has anybody heard that there's a difference of being a good man and being good at being a man? Just brief differences is, being a good man is someone who is morally upright, who is kind. Being good at being a man is more of someone who's strong, resilient, capable, and protective. So we'll go into more detail and really getting an understanding of the difference, because if being a good man has the traits of kindness, integrity, honesty, and compassion, couldn't we also say that women have the traits of kindness, integrity, honesty, and compassion? No, I am, and because there's nothing necessarily wrong with being a good man. It just then gets conflated over the characteristics of a good man can be applied to any woman as well. So then how do we actually come up with a distinction between the two? So being good at being a man, those traits are strength, mastery, honor, courage, leadership, and the ability to protect and provide, and not necessarily just financially. So we want to go over modern culture and how it praises just being a good man and often neglects or discourages being good at being a man. With the whole modern culture talking about toxic masculinity, literally there's nothing toxic about masculinity. We actually have a lack of masculinity. We have a problem in this country of no one is actually showing men how to be men. And culture wants to praise being a good man, of just being kind, just being respectful, and following orders that we are being told. If we think culturally, everybody wants to get behind man who's capable of danger. If we watch any movie, this superhero is capable of danger. Even the villains are often rooted on because they're men capable of danger, right? They're dangerous men, whether it's the good guy or the bad guy in a movie. But when it comes to real life, culturally, we don't want men to be either the hero or the villain. Both are essentially vilified. But we need to come up with a culture, and we need to create more men who are good at being men, so that we can get rid of some of this whole toxic masculinity, and we can actually create younger generations, teach our sons how to be men. So therefore, your culture improves. So, and we can even go into biblical foundations, like Corinthians 16:13 says, "Be watchful, stand firm in faith, act like men, and be strong." If we think of that, be watchful, stand firm in faith, act like men, and be strong, we want to think of the necessity of controlled strength. A dangerous man who chooses discipline over chaos. It's for the benefit of your family and the benefit of your culture, your country, etc. So if we want to go over real world examples, so mental and physical resilience, for example, like a first responder. running into danger while others run away. It's that example of the police officer running into the pond to save the 11-year-old when there was men on the sidelines just watching. And the thing is, you have people all over the internet and people on this call who do cold plunges already for 5-minute cold plunges. It's become trendy amongst certain groups of people to do cold showers, do cold plunges. But yet, when somebody's life is on the line, essentially, because I say life on the line because the 11-year-old wasn't able to save himself, as the video showed, men are willing to stand on the sideline and witness a young child die, potentially. And it takes we shouldn't even be using that term man in the sense that biologically they're a man. They're those guys who are good. Those guys are just good men, and it's hard to even use the word good, but they're not good at being a man. They're not being courageous. Courageous is putting your own physical well-being on the line for somebody else, not out of fear or anger. And yet they waited for a police officer who used zero equipment. Matt made a good point. He probably has 30 extra pounds of gear on him, who then he went and rescued this young boy. So what kind of culture are we creating that we're not even courageous anymore to help save this kid? And his head wasn't going under. He was trudging through, and he saved the kid. But it's kind of disgusting in the fact that there are videos of men on the sidelines just watching. It's a perfect example of there's just good men out there who just go on day to day, and there's a lack of men who are good at being men. So another example is, as leadership under pressure. It's like, let's say that a father's leading his family through crisis. It's the fact that he's able to stay composed when things go wrong versus bringing that worry onto his family. Because it does no good for us to bring any of our worries onto our family. So this is where leadership comes into play. Like, a good man might feel like he has to involve that worry and be willing to set some of the responsibility on their spouse versus being composed, making tough decisions with a calm mind and ensuring his family that everything is going to be okay. Because there's a lot of mindset to it, and a lot of mindset has to do with leadership, especially leadership under pressure. Because in this example, if something goes wrong financially for the guy, it's easy for us to be like, okay, wife, can you work double shift? I'm just going to collect some unemployment, you work a double shift. Versus him calmly coming up with you know what? I'm going to replace our income as if that is my sole purpose in life right now. Because a man can be committed to his family and committed to work, committed to creating a business, committed to multiple things, because that will in turn benefit the family. So another thing, we want to think of controlled strength and protection. A man defending his family in a threatening situation. A man standing up for his values despite societal pressure. There's a lot of ways we can look at that. The difference between a good man and a man being good at being a man. And we have to think of the possible outcomes, what it is to stand up against things despite societal pressure. I mean, how often do we see maybe things go on again with men that we know is not right, but yet we allow it anyways? My thing is, I always bring up COVID, and if we're a country of free men, we should be able to choose whether we take the shot, whether we wear a mask. We should be able to choose that thing. And if you choose to do it, then so be it. But if we're doing it based on fear and based on control or pressure from media, that's one thing. If we believe in deep down in our heart that this is the right thing to do, so be it. But also, if you're a man of faith, the Bible literally tells us not to live in fear. Living in fear is a win by the enemy. So then if we make decisions out of fear as well, how responsible is that for us in being a good man and actually leading our family if our responses are out of fear versus being in a calm state and make a calculated decision? And then we have providing and building something greater than himself. What does that mean? An example is a man creating a legacy for his children and mentoring the next generation of men. We already mentioned that too often we have men who are going through life without being told what it is to be a man. And if that's the case, how do we magically figure out what that means one day? What in our society, this is a real question for everybody, what in society defines when a boy actually becomes a man? Is there something that is clear cut, or is there something that we think might be the answer? Responsibility. And that we want to make clear the start versus the actual becomes a man, because I could say that my 8-year-old, he does all his responsibilities. There are days where we wake up and an hour after he wakes up, all his chores are done and you don't have to ask. But that doesn't make him a man. Anyone else? What do you got, Matt? Okay, so you were stating that when the guy leaves his family, is paying for his own, is with a wife, he has all his own responsibilities that he's taking care of and doesn't have anybody helping him, like family, etc. So I mean, I definitely like that, and I think it's a step. So let's say if that's the case, anybody who's married and has a job becomes any man who gets married and has a job. But now, what is it that we're actually teaching? Because then that example leaves the fact that we never have to teach our son anything, that eventually the day he has a job and a wife and is paying for all of his own bills, that he's a man. And I guess my question isn't the step, it's like, what's that defining thing that you're officially 100% a man? Because there's many steps in being a man. So if we even go back to the time of knighthood, they would take boys when they were 7, 8 years old away from their moms and they'd become pages. And it would be a process where they would work and away from their moms. And then they would become like squires, and they would be working now for a knight and his assistants. And they would go through different stages, and you would graduate to these different stages. And then you would graduate to actual knighthood. And you had to learn like what chivalry was. You had to learn the art of war, multiple steps, and there was other cultures where it's like you take a boy and he has to go out and hunt on his own. Kill, we'll just say, a lion. It's either he comes back, killed a lion, or he doesn't come back. Now, some of these may sound extreme, but they were literal cultural processes that allowed a man to become into manhood. Today, we don't have any of those. And we're also, at the same time, we don't have fathers teaching men how to be men. Because if it's just that the day that you're financially taking care of you get married, you're taking care of them financially, you live on your own, there's just too many holes in that game plan around like what is a man. And not that it's wrong, it's just a step. And Matt, you even said like, that's a step. I agree that those things are definitely steps. But I want to get back to that. Let's put a pin in that really quick. So one of the things is like, how do we face hardships? How do we become a man who like overcomes difficulty, whether it's in childhood, without playing a victim? Because a good guy might use that as an expression of himself of, I'm this way because I've done this things in my life because, and they're using a victim mentality, especially culturally now, because victim mentality is almost praised in a sense culturally. Like Matt, Gavin on here, the kid broke his neck. What were you, 14 or 12? 14, broke his neck. He's would you call yourself a quadriplegic? Quadriplegic. He could use that as why his life is a certain way, but he doesn't. In some of his social media, he'll even make fun of himself, go, why do you think my hands look weird? And he's like, oh, because it broke my neck, but I can still do the killer, the best graphic design logo for you there is. Versus the reason I can't do something is because I broke my neck when I was 14. And then we gotta be able to, as being good at being a man, stand firm on our beliefs and values and not compromising our integrity even when it is hard. Now, oftentimes, yeah. And again, all that has to do with, and for the people just listening, Gavin, you said that when you're around me, you admire that I will just speak my mind. And if someone says something I disagree with, I'm willing to speak on it, especially if it has to do with any morals or values. One of the big parts that attributes to is if we are comfortable in our own skin, if our identity is in something that cannot be taken away from us. Because a good man, what is his identity in? Versus a man who's good at being a man. His identity oftentimes is in something that is irrevocable. Whether his identity be in God or his identity be in like honor, integrity, what is our identity in that example? And then how this relates to being a high value man, because anyone who's been on any social media or anyone who looks at the landscape of life, anybody, any walk of life, even throughout history, it's like a high value man isn't just a good man. A high value man is good at being a man. He's so capable, respected, respects himself, is reliable, and not just nice. Being the nice guy is merely a characteristics of just being a good guy. But Proverbs 27:17 says, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. So again, it's that importance of male brothership and mentorship, which goes back to how do we actually create men? And it's having that father figure and a brotherhood where we hold each other accountable and having a mentorship. Because I've said this a dozen times, masculinity is not defined by women. Masculinity can only be defined by men amongst other men. And there may be characteristics about a man that a woman likes, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's masculine. I often see women make posts on social media about masculinity, and I will, as nice as I can, reply, these characteristics don't necessarily attribute to masculinity. I agree with these characteristics, and men should have these characteristics, but it has nothing to do with masculinity. And we often get it conflated. So I want to like kind of challenge everybody on the call. Like, if we are to assess ourselves and how we've been programmed, how we've been raised, Are we just going day to day being a good man, or are we working on being good at being men? Yeah, so in that situation, though, also it's going to be one of those things where it's the strength under control. So when you have that conversation, you are doing it with integrity, firm, a calm mind, though, and not actually letting it bother you in the fact of that it's going to allow you to be angry. It's going to allow that it won't flip the switch. And this is something that a good thing to talk about is one of the things about being good at being a man is having that state in your mind in any confrontation of that you are strength under control and you are calm. It's like a fighter. You look at the best fighters in the world, whether it's boxing, MMA, UFC champions, they are the calmest guy. There's zero anger. And Matt, with doing Muay Thai, Gavin, being in the wrestling world, it is having that mindset that you're so confident and comfortable in your own skin, you never have to mask it with anger. Like, that's one of the things that collectively that we need to work on as men. We need to show other men, and that past generations of men, whether it's pride or insecurity, have tried to govern through anger. Like, I know I've seen it a lot. I've talked to a lot of men who they're like, dads would just be angry, dads would just yell. And it only just breeds that same thing for future generations. When, if we were to think of the concept of strength under control, if we think of when Jesus says that, those who have strength under control will inherit the earth. If we think of Jesus when the Romans were persecuting him, he could have gone into a rage and destroyed the whole Roman Empire. But he made sure that he was so calm because he had to sacrifice himself for us, that he was in a calm state and actually went through with it for our sacrifice, for us, so that we can get to the Holy Land through him. At no point did he use anger when he was being crucified. And we got to think of that. He went through the most painful thing possible and was confronted by the Roman Empire and the Roman army, and was cool, calm, and collective. Like Fedor, Canelo Alvarez, any of the most recent badass guys, GSP, John Jones. Yeah, Fedor had his face of just like another day in the library. Think of any fighter and just, they might, they might be a little excited and be moving around, but nerves takes away from your energy. No, you're good. So now I got a question for you. How is it that we implement the mindset of that warrior mindset in our day-to-day lives, in all of our interactions, of not allowing our emotions to get the best of us? But no. So I want to ask you, if you were to think about what's the best way to go about it, how would you go? Every day to day, like, how do you carry the mindset of getting into the ring and not letting emotions come over you? So what do you think it does psychology wise? Not even psychology, I don't want to use that word. What do you think it does to a boss, another man, a woman, anyone who we come in contact with? What do you think it does to their psyche when they realize we can't be rattled? Okay, so it allows you to be in a state of control. If you can't be rattled by anything negative, then does that actually mean that we're in control of every situation that we're in? Exactly, because we can't control the reaction of a boss. We can't control the actions of the random guy at the hotel gym. We can't control any of their actions. We can only control ours. And if there is ever any conflict or any engagement with somebody else, if we can control ours with the sense that we're in control of the situation, because we are calm, cool, and collective, we have that warrior mindset and we feel comfortable in any engagement, whether it be physical or verbal, mental. You essentially have the upper hand the entire time. Because you got to think, if you're going into a fight against Fedor and he just has that, I'm a librarian, it's one day late look on his face that he always has of nothing being phased, people are going to go into that and like naturally, because it's a fight, they're thinking he's a stone cold killer. He probably has bodies in his basement. And it's psychologically, Fedor has control over the situation. Or GSP, him just casually pacing back and forth, looking at his opponent in the most calm state. If we go have that calm state in every time we talk to anybody, it gives us the upper hand. It gives you the presence of a high value man as well. It gives you that energy of the warrior mindset, strength under control. Again, whether we're talking to our wife, we're talking to our boss, or we're talking to a complete stranger. Anytime someone's feathers are ruffled, that when I talk to them, I know that I've already won. And it's just how far do they want to go? And if you think about it, in any conflict situation, the guy who loses his shit first is usually the guy who's going to end up losing in some fashion or another. Whether it's a debate on TV, whether it's a physical altercation versus the person who's calm, cool, and collective. Even if it's like just a verbal argument with like your spouse, it's like, at what time do you see red and you don't even realize what it is that you're said, what it is that you were arguing about? Any of us. Even work, if your boss realizes that he cannot shake you, cannot rattle you, they're like, man, this is my closer. Why can't I get under his skin? Even though that's poor leadership, them trying to rattle you. But that's a different topic. Like, or when Gavin was saying like, man, I wish I could say stuff to somebody. I just don't have that nerve yet. It's like, okay, what if we do and we say it in the most calm, cool, collective state? Because we are aware, we're confident in our skin, we're confident in the knowledge that we have. Because Gavin's a smart kid. I've had some deep conversations with Gavin. So when we do say those things, if we cannot be rattled 99% of the time, there's no negative outcome. There is negative outcome, though, on how we present ourselves as a man or a high-value man if we're easily shaken, if we're easily rattled. So, like, on one hand, it's like you could be like Gavin and not say anything. That does no good. No offense, Gavin. Or you could be like Matt and just get pissed, and that's no good. So if we're both of them are, you could say, is definitely a negative. Just and it's just which route do you want to go? Two, you're not willing to verbalize your morals or values because you're worried about the outcome. The other one is you're quick to anger, and therefore it's still going to have the negative outcome. And it's part of that being good at being a man is the warrior mentality that you are just so calm. You have your sword sheathed. It's the warrior in the garden. Your sword is sheathed because you don't have a reason to unsheath it. And it's something that men in general need to practice. And you guys are humble enough that you guys are even on this call because you're willing to make those adjustments and become the warrior in the garden amongst a bunch of gardeners in a war. Because you could say culturally we're in a war right now. Okay? They don't want a bunch of guys who are good at being men. You can't control them historically. So we got to figure out how we have that mindset from Gavin of being willing to speak your mind. Here are my morals and values. Here's how I feel. And then Matt being so calm, you're in that ring. Because you, of anyone, know that you lose your cool in the ring, you're probably getting put to sleep. Out goes the game plan. Out goes your awareness. Your hands are down. You know, you're swinging for the fences. You're getting gassed. You're not even breathing. And then you wake up. What happened? I was in such a rage. I was going to knock him out. Did I knock him out? They're like, no, that's why you're looking at the ceiling. So we just have to think of those like little things of like Gavin taking a breath and then speaking up. Matt taking a breath and be like, I'm just cool as butter. And we all got to do those things because I used to be the guy who would intentionally, if I saw an opening for an argument with my wife, I would take it and I wanted to win that argument. And I had to realize that is a shit way to live with my wife. And that was something I had to completely work on. Does no good arguing, one, with your wife, two, with any woman at all. Because like what does that imply? Now someone might think this is sexist, but essentially you are just bringing your status down each and every time. Because who really argues with women? Their toddler. And that's true. You know, no. Other women don't argue with each other. They just talk shit about each other behind their backs. Okay? But it's like you ask any woman out there and it's like, who argues with you? And it's going to be the saddest thing if they say their husband. But it's like culture. It's going to be like toddlers. It's like, how do I get my 2 or 3-year-old to do something? So then we have to figure out how to be in a place that we're so cool-headed that we're able to have a discussion with her and she says, yes, this is awesome. I feel so good. Let's go. Because it's about that masculine and feminine state and how they complement each other. And that's what being good at being a man is, because you're aware. A good guy will just be nice and he'll just kind of want to avoid the conflict or tell her yes on this, even though he might not feel that's the right direction for the family. But he doesn't care because he's just trying to be the good guy, and she takes over and makes a lot of the decisions. And maybe there's that one family out there who that it works better that way, but universally, and not calling out the exception, overall, that's not how we are designed. We are complementary of each other. My wife makes me more money by being a stay-at-home wife, being a stay-at-home mom, because she complements me and my work. You know, and a lot of people don't like the sound of that, but it's literally true. It's how we were designed biologically and biblically. So even if someone's secular, Hey, biologically, that's how we were designed. Go look at the animal kingdom, it's the same there too. But we have to be the men who lead and are so self aware of these things. We're not just being the good guy, we're not being the bad guy. There is a time for being the bad guy. But in this context of what we're talking about today, the bad guy is the guy who doesn't say anything at all, and the bad guy is the guy who is just quick to anger. My thing was always being right with my wife. I always had to be right. I didn't care what it was. If I found a spot to argue or debate with her, I was going to be right, even if it was by a sliver. And that does no good. What was I doing? Trying to do that. I mean, I could go over a million faults of mine that I've had to overcome and change my relationship. A million. That's not just the one. I got a handful of over the years of practicing. But if you guys have any questions in regards to this, one of the last thing is, before the questions, we got to encourage each other to be developing our skills, strength, leadership, and all the necessities to just becoming like truly a masculine man who's good at being a man. And like what those are, and hold each other accountable. Part of this thing that I'm doing is I want a space for a brotherhood and us to hold each other accountable and help each other grow. Because again, like that verse says in Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. If we don't have that, we're just a dull blade wandering through life. I'm going to be doing more calls in different times in this specifically for men. I even want to do a Bible study one, where we're just going over stuff that's just biblical, and more conversation. And I think it'll be good. And all I ask in return is that you guys just share the community with just one person. So what questions do we got? So you're nice guying it with the girls who you're in conversation with. For anyone listening, Gavin's response was, "I'm a pussy." That's why I laughed. No, I mean it's a good point. It starts with the fathers. It definitely starts with the fathers, 100%. So here's the thing: is it falls on you to not allow any of that fear into your family, though, because you guys are leading, really you, with such confidence that you're not worried. You have to be the example for the family and lead your household with such confidence that you don't care about your son or daughter ever interacting with some kid who's being pressured by their parents to participate in any trans movement, because you're so confident in the way that you guys are raising, and you're so ingrained in the family as a whole that it doesn't matter, because we can't live in fear. That's the enemy winning. All the fear that you talked about, because the enemy does not like children. The enemy attacks. Yeah, exactly. So the enemy does not favor women because they are childbearing. But so those fears that you have to figure out how to get rid of those because of the confidence you have in your faith and your ability to lead the family, that it doesn't bother you. Just think about that. Just remember, any fears that we have is the enemy getting a small victory. So we got to think, if you're living in those fears, regardless if you think your kid will take on those fears, they will. Because you're not just going to hide them one day. Like, children know when their parents are inebriated, even if they haven't seen their parent drink. It's like kids are very attentive. They literally look to us and all of our energy, our movements, our words. They will be listening while we think that they're just in the other room not listening, because it's how they survive. They have to mimic us in order to survive. So your fears, I promise you, will be put onto your children if you don't get over your own fears. They will have those fears. And then they might be living in fear about something that doesn't even bother you. And then you're going, why does this bug you? Because it doesn't bug you. Well, it bugs them, but it doesn't bug you. Because they've learned the act of taking on fears. So that is something I'd be very mindful of as you have a baby popping out in 8 months. Yeah. But we'll talk more about that. It is 12. Boys, I'm going to go. I'm going to do another men's only one. I'm going to figure out a good time. It might be in the mornings, earlier in the morning, so that you can get on the East Coast time, so that all the East Coast guys can get on and the West Coast guys. Maybe like on a Wednesday morning. Gavin gets up pretty early. Some of the other guys I know get up pretty early. All right, boys. Well, hey, share this one person.
Hey guys, really quick, I just wanted to take a second and thank you for listening. I appreciate you being here, and I just want to let you know that I have zero plans to ever run ads on this podcast. No interruptions, no distractions, just straight value for you. Now, if you're getting something out of this, the best way to support me is simple. Tell 2 friends about the podcast and leave a review. It helps me more than you know. And if you're looking for something even deeper, join my school community at school.com/ultimate husband, or just search High Value Life. It's for both men and women who want to level up in every area: marriage, leadership, mindset, everything. I hope to see you there.